This is the indictment we've been waiting almost 3 decades for.
He's one of more than 10,000 people whose car has been broken into so far this year in Oakland. But his story doesn't end with the shattered glass you see there on Broadway.
We will keep the government open for 45 days with a clean CR at current funding levels. We said from day one, this is a bridge CR, a temporary solution, not the final destination. We will not stop fighting for more economic and security assistance for Ukraine. Majorities in both parties support Ukraine aid, and doing more is vital for America's security and for democracy around the world.
Interesting moment over the weekend when your New York colleague, Congressman Jamal Bowman, and he's under investigation for this now after Capitol Police say he pulled a fire alarm in one of the House office buildings. Democrats were trying to delay a final vote on the bill. There he is pulling the fire alarm. He says it was an accident. He thought pulling the alarm would open a door based on the fact that the doors to his right there were locked, and there was a sign that he said he was, I think someone said it was confusing. I'll be honest, it doesn't really make sense to me, his explanation.
The U.S. soldier who ran across the border from South Korea in July is now in U.S. custody. The Pentagon says U.S. officials have secured the return of Private Travis King from North Korea.
In the early morning hours, Army Private Travis King walked off a military flight and into a Texas Army hospital to be physically and mentally evaluated. He had just been released from 10 weeks captivity in North Korea after bolting across the border from South Korea, where he had been stationed. Prior to fleeing, King had spent 47 days in a South Korean jail for assault. The Army was sending him home to face possible disciplinary action or discharge. But he somehow managed to leave the airport with a tour group, seen here in a black baseball cap, the U.S. working through Sweden and China to get him home. Now the question, will he be punished by the U.S. military? It's not clear why North Korea released King, but officials in Washington insist they didn't give the country anything in exchange for his return, while downplaying expectations that this might have been a sign of improved relations between the two countries.
The Secretary of the Army, the following general officer is retired. General Mark A. Milley.
Joint Chiefs Chairman General Mark Milley has officially retired after holding the military's top job for the last 4 years and spending more than 4 decades serving the country.
And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator. We don't take an oath to an individual. We take an oath to the Constitution, and we take an oath to the idea that is America, and we're willing to die to protect it.
Here are the comments that Milley is referring to. It's a post from Trump saying that Milley's calls with his Chinese counterpart in the final days of his administration were an action so egregious that in the past they would have been punishable by death. According to multiple sources, mind you, these were calls where in part Milley sought to calm his counterpart in China by reassuring him that the U.S. was not considering an attack on China. Sources say there were 15 people on these video calls.
Mark, your partnership has been invaluable to me, and I've given my word to that. And I think it's been invaluable to Secretary Austin as well. I want to thank you for always seeing, always sharing the whole map with me, the whole map. Thanks, pal.
The state of emergency in New York, a deluge of 2 months' worth of rain falling on the city in 24 hours, causing severe flooding in some areas.
Yesterday's powerful and moisture-laden storm capped off New York City's second wettest September on record.
NYPD sharing video of this sea lion that escaped from its enclosure due to the flooding, but returned without leaving the zoo. The torrential downpour sending water cascading down stairs at subway stations. The system coming to a complete halt as rain poured through openings and cracks. This video showing water shooting out of the wall at the 7th Avenue subway station in Manhattan. More than 1,000 flights canceled or delayed. Hard-hit Brooklyn receiving nearly a month's worth of rain in just a few hours. Vehicles plowing through flooded roads and floating trash. A whirlpool forming over a storm drain. Brooklyn's 4th Avenue looking like a lake. SUVs creating waves as drivers test their luck despite the dangerous conditions.
Democrats and those close around the president are worried about the 80-year-old's fitness to make it on the trail, possibly suffering another fall that could jeopardize his re-election run. The steps that they're taking in terms of Biden making sure he wears tennis shoes. He's working with a physical therapist now, fitness coach rather, to work on balance. They're having, I think, lowered steps into Air Force One, I believe now. I mean, I applaud them for taking these measures for someone who is 80 years old, but I do wonder in the terms of voters, will they look at this and say, if you have to do all of these things, maybe he shouldn't be president?
The guy can't find his way off of a stage. Look, here's a stage. Here's a stage. I've never seen this stupid stage before, right? I've never seen it. But if I walk left, there's a stair. And if I walk right, there's a stair. And this guy gets up. Where am I?
Republicans have announced their first 3 witnesses in the impeachment inquiry hearings into President Joe Biden. They'll ask Bruce Dubinsky, a forensic accountant, Eileen O'Connor, a former Justice Department tax attorney, and conservative legal scholar Jonathan Turley to weigh in on the business dealings of the Biden family.
Mr. Turley, I have a simple question for you. In your testimony today, are you presenting any firsthand witness account of crimes committed by the President of the United States?
No, I'm not.
No, you are not. Ms. O'Connor, you are the second Republican witness here today. Have you, in your testimony, presented any firsthand witness account of crimes committed by the President of the United States?
But when you watch some of the other clips from the hearing where they really laid out the evidence in full, I thought that they did a good job. And this is the first hearing in the impeachment inquiry. I don't think anyone's expecting at this point, or they shouldn't be expecting at this point, that the investigation is concluded and they have the smoking gun yet. The whole point of launching the inquiry in the first place was to have a series of hearings where they could bring in witnesses and hopefully garner some additional testimony, some additional evidence.
This is now a slide of the organizational chart of the Hunter Biden business companies and with associates from 2018, from the same IRS investigators who broke down the business structure in 2014. Does this slide cause you the same concern, Mr. Dubinsky?
Yes, it does.
They found this new bank payment that was made from the Chinese energy company to Hunter Biden. The beneficiary address was listed as Joe Biden's Delaware home, even though Hunter was not living there at the time. He had recently moved to California with his new wife. They laid out the actual web chart of the offshore companies and businesses that the money was flown through to the Biden family members. They had some new text messages where Hunter Biden was talking with family members about how this was all done to protect Joe and how Joe was glomming some of his money. So I think there was evidence presented. It was just that the mainstream media wasn't interested in taking those parts of the hearing and broadcasting them because it would make Biden look bad. While it is circumstantial, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to put the threads together and realize that the payments that were being remitted to the Biden family were in exchange for no real services. Hunter Biden at one point received $142,000 from a Kazakhstani oligarch and then bought a sports car the next day. I mean, what work realistically was Hunter Biden doing for some guy in Kazakhstan? And then one of the other stories that's not talked about much, but I think is really good evidence of the corruption scheme, the pay for play, is in 2014, Hunter Biden had his investment firm, Rosemont Seneca Thornton. He got $3.5 million from a Russian oligarch named Yelena Baturina. And around that time was when Joe Biden showed up for dinner with Baturina and Hunter Biden and Devin Archer. They had dinner at Cafe Milano. The lawmaker said there's no evidence that Hunter Biden provided any actual services to Baturina. And meanwhile, she was omitted from a round of U.S. sanctions that were put on Russian oligarchs in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
We learned today that Sir Michael Gambon has died. Tonight, actors Daniel Radcliffe and Helen Mirren among those paying tribute.
Welcome to another year at home.
Senator Dianne Feinstein passed away age 90. She was still serving in her seat. She was a senior senator from the state of California.
Man, we got Sunday Bloody Sunday with the student loans kicking back in Sunday, and Christmas is bearing down on us, and so it is time to get on a budget and get on a plan.
We now officially have a dress code in place on the Senate floor. It will require a coat, a tie, long pants of some sort of slack, of which, now, personally, I don't even think you should wear khakis on the Senate floor.
Justin thought he had done enough to hide the gear in the trunk of his rented Tesla while he had lunch on Broadway, just across from the YMCA. But he came out to find this. Windows shattered, his camera, lenses, and drone gone. Justin had just bought the gear and hadn't had time to insure it.
I literally felt like the pit of my stomach drop. I knew that the equipment wasn't insured. And so to have it gone so soon after buying it, just was devastating.
Usually in these cases, it's smash, grab, and gone. You have little chance of retrieving your property. But Justin had hidden tracking devices inside his gear cases. And on a phone app, he watched the criminals travel from Oakland into San Francisco.
You know, it was on Post Street, right? And it's literally moving.
He's on the phone with a San Francisco police officer when he sees his camera gear arrive at this location in the 300 block of Leavenworth.
And he goes, oh yeah, that's a known major fencing operation.
This incident might have been recorded on the YMCA surveillance cameras, and Justin asked them and the police to save it. I started asking questions about it, and today the YMCA reported that the video has been recorded over, even though we asked. They didn't save it in time. There it is.
That's incredible. And it's so wild that everybody knows it's this open market for selling this stuff, and it still operates.
This is killing people.
Mayor London Breed's new proposal would require those who suffer from drug addiction to be screened and treated before they can receive any cash assistance from the city. A tough love approach, as San Francisco is set to exceed its current record number of overdose deaths this year. Officials with the assistance program explained that this proposal will only impact single adults ages 18 to 65 with no dependents. Right now, 5,200 people are a part of this program, receiving anywhere from $100 to $700 in cash assistance each month.
No more anything goes without accountability. No more handouts without accountability.
This approach follows similar measures in other blue cities, including New York and Portland. It would only impact this one general assistance program. Those who do not comply with the testing or treatment will not lose their housing, just that cash assistance.
Welcome to New York City, K5, and welcome to the NYPD.
At 5 feet 400 pounds, the Nightscope K5 autonomous security robot is the NYPD's new high-tech crime fighter. It talks.
In case you're wondering, I'm the security robot. Nice to see you here.
And it roams with 4 cameras spanning 360 degrees, recording in high definition. For 2 months, K5 will patrol the Times Square subway station. A human officer will work alongside it. In case of emergency, you can press an alert button on the robot that will connect you to a live person.
It will record video that can be reviewed in case of an emergency or a crime. It will not record audio, and it will not use facial recognition.
K5 joins the NYPD's fast-growing futuristic force.
I also did some research. It's used in other cities like Philadelphia, Austin, Texas, and Honolulu, Hawaii, mostly in hospitals, casinos, as well as police departments. Yeah, $70,000 for a robot like that seemed kind of low to me.
Yeah.
It's probably a couple of million, but good point. So probably to lease it about 70 grand a year. But the NYPD says right now the plan is to have it for 2 months to see how things go. And if it goes well, then they'll talk about maybe it being a permanent part of the police department.
This is the aftermath of a looting spree in Philadelphia, which ended with dozens of teenagers under arrest. Police say more than 100 masked teenagers ransacked multiple stores, including Lululemon and Apple. They also say this was a coordinated effort.
Look!
Look, security running.
21-year-old Deja Blackwell arrested Tuesday night and released after recording and posting video of a mob of people burglarizing and stealing from a slew of retail stores in Center City. Interim Police Commissioner John Stanford said Blackwell was leading the charge that night.
This person incited a lot of other individuals to do. At one point, what we know is coordinated a caravan of individuals to go across the city, hitting multiple locations.
Blackwell, known on social media as Meatball, could be heard in this video encouraging the crowd who was inside the Center City Apple store stealing phones and tablets. She's also accused of live streaming what stores and which locations to loot.
I need some sleep. I'm scared. I'm traumatized. Never again in my life.
Kenneth Fry was also among the more than 50 people arrested Tuesday night. In April of last year, Fry was a bouncer at Taboo nightclub in the neighborhood and was seen on video punching 41-year-old patron Eric Pope and knocking him unconscious. Pope died from his injuries. Fry was arrested and charged with third-degree murder, but in December, a judge dismissed that charge. The district attorney's office filed an appeal, but Fry was able to post bail on manslaughter charges and was released.
Police now say they've charged at least 40 people suspected of taking to the streets and stealing goods.
But authorities telling Action News that they expect to charge more people, taking that number up to 70.
The DA's office tells me that they have filed a motion to revoke bail on Fry's prior case because this latest incident is a violation of that bail. As for Blackwell, I reached out to her today to ask for an interview. She declined. And we're also learning that both Blackwell and Fry have posted bail and been released today. The DA's office tells me that this is another failure.
This comes as Target, the retail chain, announces it is closing down 9 stores in 4 cities over shoplifting and organized retail theft. The company says it's tried locking up merchandise and adding security guards, but it's not helping.
Police say the crimes were not connected to the earlier peaceful protest over the earlier court decision.
A judge has just ruled that Donald Trump committed fraud by exaggerating the value of his assets in financial statements. This was a major plank of Tish James's case against Donald Trump. That case is set to go to trial on Monday. Donald Trump's attorneys had also asked to throw out the case, and the judge denied that request.
And they've not only done that, the judge has has called for the cancellation of all of the defendant's business certificates in New York. And then on a third one, they're fining a number of the lawyers $7,500 each. This has now been 4 years in the making. It's been going through the civil courts. The essence of what they're trying to do, just in plain terms, is literally trying to run Donald Trump's businesses out of the state of New York.
Wow.
We have over 18,000 Big Three members on strike at 41 facilities in 21 states. That includes over 5,000 workers striking at parts distribution centers and CCAs at Stellantis and GM from California to Massachusetts.
Made a lot of sacrifices, gave up a lot, and the companies were in trouble. But now they're doing incredibly well. And guess what? You should be doing incredibly well too. It's a simple proposition. You know, this is a historic moment. The first time in our country's history that a sitting USA president has came out and stood on the picket line.
Do you think that the president has earned the vote of workers? Are we beyond that, given just how divided this country is as a whole?
So the UAW is a huge union, you know, and every poll I ever saw when I was there was about 1/3 that was Republican, 1/3 Democratic, and 1/3.
I apologize for the interruption. We're going to hear the president, and I'll come right back to you.
The middle class. That's a fact. So let's keep going. You deserve what you've earned, and you've earned a hell of a lot more than you're getting paid now. Thank you very much.
So has he earned the vote? I thought this might have been a longer speech.
Meanwhile, Republicans have pointed out that Biden spent just 15 minutes on the picket line before boarding Air Force One to head to a fundraiser in California.
The auto workers' strike expanded today as it entered its 3rd week. 7,000 more workers are joining the picket lines. The strike now targeting a Ford plant in Chicago and a General Motors assembly factory near Lansing, Michigan. About 25,000 of the union's 146,000 workers at the Big Three automakers are now on strike.
The Writers Guild of America is officially back to work as of 12:01 this morning.
That's right. Union leaders approved of a 3-year deal yesterday, ending what's been 5 months of strikes. The writers are allowed to return to work despite the ongoing ratification process. The deal reportedly includes pay raises, streaming-related bonuses, and growing protections from artificial intelligence.
The performers have different issues that they're negotiating for than the writers, but there are some things, like you said, that overlap, especially when you're looking at AI, when you're looking at streaming residuals. So I imagine that the writers' deal must provide at least something of a template or give SAG-AFTRA something of an idea of what they'll be able to achieve when those contract negotiations restart.
The DOJ claims Google locked competitors out of making deals with phone makers to be the dominant search engine on their devices. The judge in the case is not expected to issue a ruling until early next year.
The government, the Department of Justice, as well as a large collection of state AGs, are suing Google, and they're alleging that the company essentially rigged the search engine market and illegally maintained a monopoly. There are these deals that essentially allow Google to be the default search engine if you open up a browser on your iPhone or on your Android phone. And if you have the Mozilla Firefox browser as well, Google will be the default. Google pays billions for that privilege, and it prevents other companies in the search market from getting that business and getting those customers. This is really an attempt to avoid embarrassing disclosures like we saw during the Microsoft case more than 20 years ago, where the public learned a great deal of information about that company, its inner workings, and it really dented the reputation of Bill Gates in some sense, illustrating how aggressive he was in trying to cut off competitors. So Google does not want its reputation to be harmed, and it also doesn't want its executives to be embarrassed. And then the company is relying on the argument that there are trade secrets.
The night of September 7th of 1996, TUPAC Shakur, along with Suge Knight and members of their entourage, which include members of Mob Piru, came to Vegas to attend the Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. Members of the Southside Compton Crips, which included Dwayne Davis, along with his nephew Orlando Anderson, were also in attendance at the same event. As both were leaving the fight, members of Death Row Records spotted Orlando Anderson near an elevator bank inside the MGM, and at that time they began to kick and punch him near that elevator bank. TUPAC Shakur was wearing a shiny satiny shirt, along with Marion Suge Knight, who was a large man in a brown suit, punching and kicking Orlando Anderson. Following this incident, you'll see hotel security intervene, and then they will leave the area of the fight. Little did anyone know that it is this incident right here that would ultimately lead to the retaliatory shooting and death of TUPAC Shakur. As they were in the white Cadillac, Mr. Davis took the gun that he had obtained and provided it to the passengers in the rear seat of the vehicle. As they were driving west on Flamingo Road near Koval, they located the black BMW, which was driven by Suge Knight, and in the passenger seat was TUPAC Shakur. And as they turned around, they pulled up near the passenger side of that vehicle and immediately began shooting at Mr. Knight and Mr. Shakur. Following that shooting, the white Cadillac fled the area southbound on Koval, and after our officers arrived on scene, TUPAC was later transported to the University Medical Center, where he was treated medically and died approximately 6 days later on September 13th.
Given the fact that Kifidi, wrote this book 5 years ago and implicated himself, talked about procuring the gun, handing it to the back seat. I mean, that almost sounded to me like it was enough for a prosecutor. I'm sort of surprised it wasn't enough. What do you think, or what do you know, they found when they executed that warrant that led 2 months later to where we are today with an arrest?
Canada's House of Commons gave a standing ovation to a Canadian-Ukrainian veteran who fought in a Nazi SS unit during World War II. 98-year-old Yaroslav Hunka was honored during a visit by the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, who also applauded him. That's the Speaker of the House of Commons, Anthony Rota, who invited Yaroslav Hunta. Rota resigned from his post Tuesday. On Wednesday, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also formally apologized.
I also want to reiterate how deeply sorry Canada is for the situation this put President Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation in. It is extremely troubling to think that this egregious error is being politicized by Russia and its supporters to provide false propaganda about what Ukraine is fighting for.
6 people have died and more than 100 others have been injured after a blaze tore through a factory in Taiwan. Rescuers are still searching for 3 people who remain unaccounted for. Taiwan's fire department says 4 of its members were among the dead. The cause of the fire is under investigation.
I'm sorry, we have to talk now. Cher. She has certainly lived many lives, but now she's accused of trying to kidnap her own adult son.